think now on time it is 12 here in Geneva, and on this sunny day we'll be starting our first ever intersessional meeting. So hereby I would like to declare our intersessional meeting at this moment of time officially opened and welcoming everybody. So let me begin by greeting you, all of you, saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and uh, we will be starting our. Uh, Let me start with my remark. Dear Excellencies, dear friends and colleagues, it's my pleasure to see you joining us today. However, virtual in this intersessional meeting, the first ever intersessional meeting that is being held uh, virtually. When we took on the presidency, we were looking forward to the opportunity of convening the intersessional meetings here in Geneva and having the opportunity to interact with all of you in person. However, no one would have expected that we would be confronted with a global pandemic of this nature and magnitude. In this sense, I do hope that all of you and all of your loved ones have been healthy through this crisis, and that we will be able, as a global community, to overcome this challenge once again. I also hope we will be able to meet together again in the future, in the near future. Let me also extend our condolences to the families who lost their loved ones during this pandemic. Despite this challenge, we wanted to call upon all states, parties, and the organizations to come together, though virtually, to continue our efforts and to continue our commitment to the implementation of this important humanitarian disarmament instrument. Distinguished colleagues and dear friends, last year we celebrated the fourth review conference, where we reiterated our shared commitment to the implementation of convention and adopted the Oslo Action Plan as a roadmap for the next 5 years to ensure the effective and efficient implementation of the convention. Let me also express my gratitude to my predecessor, Ambassador Hans Bratisker of Norway, who spared no effort to take the convention forward last year and presided over a successful fourth review conference. During the fourth review conference, we were pleased to hear many states, parties, and organizations committing once more to continue working to partnership to make the objective of our convention a reality. During the review conference, we listened to update from the state parties as well as civil societies, emphasizing what has been accomplished and living up to the commitment in different areas of the convention, including furthering our clearance, stockpile destruction, and victim assistance effort. Just weeks after the convention, we were happy to hear from Chile that it had made a great achievement and completed implementation of its obligation of addressing mined areas under Article 5. We commend Chile for the effort and the achievement. That is a proof, once again, that our objectives are achievable should we make it a priority. However, with this progress, we also have a number of challenges that warrant our continued attention. A number of state parties have significant challenges to overcome in implementing their mine clearance commitment, including challenges related to security and to financing. Today, more than ever before, a number of state parties find themselves facing challenges associated with improvised anti-personnel mine having been extensively employed in areas under their jurisdiction or control, a matter which lies clearly within the framework of the convention. With the number of new casualties and the changing nature of conflicts, we need to look at different ways of protecting the civilian population through mine risk education and reduction methodologies. We must also ensure that our stockpile destruction commitment are achieved as soon as possible before it causes more casualties. We must address the challenge of measuring the impact of our victim assistance efforts and ensuring that our efforts are leading towards a sustainable framework for supporting mine victims without losing sight of the immediate support required by survivors. Also, we have 33 states that remain outside the convention. We must continue to encourage these states to make meaningful steps toward adhering to the convention, leading to their eventual accession and ratification of the convention. This year, we set ourselves a goal of establishing a baseline value for implementation of the indicators of the Oslo Action Plan. These intersessional meetings and the work carried out by the committees is a first step in accomplishing this. In this regard, we will need everyone on board and leaving no one behind. On the road up to the 18th meeting of the state parties in November, the committees will be working with you to ensure that we accurately record the status of implementation of the Oslo Action Plan by your states. Therefore, over the course of this week intersessional meeting, let us do the following. We must revisit the actions and indicators of Oslo Action Plan, some of which are now uh, are new and we need to make them happen, and they are very innovative. And in revisiting the Oslo Action Plan, ensure that your state has provided information which will allow the committees and myself, with the support of the ISU, to measure progress in implementing of all actions of the Oslo Action Plan and to establish the baseline value for indicators from which progress is in subsequent years will be compared. Our aim is to present this baseline at the 18th meeting of the state parties. Above all, we must focus on implementation and on the continuing to make this convention a success for landmine survivors, the mine-affected communities, and to those whom have worked and continue to work tirelessly for a mine-free world even during these trying times. 21 years on, we must not lose sight of how far we have come or to ignore the challenges that remain and the will and the determination to fulfill our commitment. We must work to ensure continued compliance with the Convention's obligations and hold our Convention's vision of a world in which there are no casualties and there is no suffering due to this insidious weapon. Dear colleagues, and dear friends, today we are experiencing a number of conflicts around the globe where anti-personnel mines are being employed. We need to ensure that our convention remains a strong framework to address the scourge of anti-personnel mines, and that we do not compromise with the norms of the convention that has been established. Any use of mines and any suggestions that these weapons can be used responsibly need to be condemned. I would like to take this opportunity to express my profound thanks and gratitude to the committees, to my committees and my friends in the committees for their work and excellent preparations in the lead up to this intersessional meeting during these difficult times. And it was really remarkable work has been made by all the committees working throughout these difficult times of the pandemic. We have been working virtually since the beginning of this pandemic, and our colleagues has made great effort in this. So I would like to thank them, and I would like also to express my gratitude and thanks to the ISU for its support, both to the coordination committee and as a whole, and to individual committees, and to myself as a president. Your valuable support, Mr. Ruan, and your colleague has been always encouraging, and I'm sure I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, Ruan, and thank you to all the excellent team. Dear colleagues, shortly we will hear from the chairs of the committees and from the gender focal point representative concerning the days ahead. So I may stop sometime before in this, but before doing so, let me express our deep gratitude and our deep thanks to GICHD and to its director, Ambassador Stefano Toscano, for supporting the organization of the intersessional meetings. The ISU has particularly made me aware of the great contribution of your staff, particularly Mrs. Suzanne Rees and Abby and Mrs. Lucia Rock. This meeting was made possible because of you, Stefano. We are very grateful for GICHD continued support to these meetings and your organization's commitment in this regard. Let me give you the floor, Ms. Ambassador, at this moment of time, if you can join us. The floor is yours.
Welcome. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, thank you, Mr. President, for your kind words. It is truly a great pleasure for me to take the floor during the opening of this year Intersessionals. And as you, Mr. President, let me express my hope that all participants here in Geneva and around the world and their families are safe and healthy. Mr. President, at the end of last year in Oslo, states parties committed to implementing an ambitious and measurable action plan which, when realized, would have a lasting impact on affected communities. We must now redouble our efforts to concretize this plan and strengthen the recipes for success. Strong national ownership, sound strategic planning, and the application of the latest standards, methods, and tools will continue to play a pivotal role in mine action. Many processes have already been launched to achieve the objectives of the Oslo Action Plan. Some affected states have incorporated relevant actions of the plan into their Article 5 extension requests. Some Article 7 transparency reports have been submitted that include additional information that helps measure progress. To ensure this positive momentum is sustained, states parties must be afforded with the means easily to see progress measured against the specific indicators agreed in Oslo. The GCHD is currently working on this and stands ready to support states parties in this endeavor. Notably, the use of the latest information management tools would allow states visually to represent the baseline articulated through their Article 7 reports. Also, the GCHD would like to commend again states parties for having included a new section dedicated to risk education in the Oslo Action Plan. By this, states parties have strengthened their commitment to providing context-specific and targeted risk education to affected populations and groups at risk. I encourage states parties to provide updates on the implementation of risk education measures and challenges during the next few days. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we live in uncertain times, but that should not prevent us from doing everything possible to promote our noble cause. The next 5 years will be key to our work, and we are fortunate to have before us a clear action plan to support our efforts. This very meeting, under the current circumstances, is a strong signal of the resilience of our sector and the importance we all place in safeguarding and implementing the norms established by the Convention. Let me thank you, Mr. President, the Sudanese Presidency, the Coordinating Committee, and the ISUs for their commitment to make this meeting possible. That is no small achievement. I wish you all a fruitful discussion and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you so much. What a great remarks and good intervention. Thank you so much for. And before, we are really grateful for GICT for their continued support to the meetings and to the organization in this regard. Let me assure you that the points you mentioned about the strong national ownership and the issue of the request on the Article 5 request will make sure about these points to be included in our discussions in our meetings later on. Thank you also. Let me go to about intersessional meetings. Have always, as you know, has been an opportunity for us to share detailed information on the progress and the challenges, as well as our experiences and expertise. Sharing this is very important between state parties. We are grateful for the written submissions and the exchange of information by states parties and organizations already made. This exchange of information is crucial for our success, and it will be critical to the work we will be doing in the lead up to the 18th meetings of the state parties next November. There have been also too many casualties, and we have worked too hard for us to backtrack this. We must continuously be stronger and more committed to uphold the norms of the convention and achieving the success as soon as possible. I look forward to seeing all of you to join us for the next days, and thank you once again for our implementation efforts. Now allow me to welcome uh, all of you once again and offer the floor to the chairs of the committees and the representative of the gender focal point to offer some brief remarks on the work they have been undertaking and on the matters we will be looking at over the next 3 days. I will begin with the chair of the Victim Assistance Committee, Mr. Tancredi Frances, the representative of Italy. Tancredi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you also to all the participants for joining us today. It's very important for all of us to count on the participation of all of you from every corner of the world, I will say today. and it is a special pleasure for me to address you as a chair of the Committee on Victim Assistance, which Italy is chairing, working together with the colleagues from Chile, Sweden, and Thailand. Assistance to victims and survivors of anti-personal mines is an area of work that has always set this convention apart and has normalized what we now refer to as humanitarian disarmament. As many of you already know, the purpose of the Committee on Victim Assistance is to support states parties in their national efforts to strengthen and advance victim assistance. In particular, in state parties with mine victims in areas under their jurisdiction or control. This, as many of you know, is a multi-sectoral effort. Like the President and the rest of the committees, we rely on the information submitted by your states in your Article 7 reports to develop our preliminary observation and our assessment of the baseline and status of implementation of the victim assistance action of the Oslo Action Plan. As you might know, victim assistance refers to 6 pillars. Let me briefly refer to these 6 pillars. First, data collection and information management to understand the extent of the challenge faced. Second, emergency and continuing medical care. Third, physical rehabilitation, including physiotherapy, prosthetics, and assistive devices. Fourth, psychological support and social reintegration. Fifth, economic reintegration. Sixth and final, the establishment, enforcement, and implementation of relevant laws and public policies. And in the Oslo Action Plan, as with previous action plans, we focused on these 6 pillars. But let us to be very clear, we are not only interested in your progress made in fulfilling the VA commitments, but also in the challenge faced in the spots, always in a spirit of cooperation. So together we can better support each other. There are a few new elements that I would like to draw your attention to, since this is the first year that we are implementing the Oslo Action Plan, such as the commitment of states party to ensure that they have a government entity to be appointed and to develop an action plan for monitoring and reporting on implementation based on SMART objectives. Also, the fact that relevant national humanitarian response and preparedness plans have to be provided for the safety and protection of mine survivors in situation of risk, including situation of armed conflict, humanitarian emergencies, and natural disasters. And this is in line with relevant international humanitarian and human rights law and international guidelines. Also, the states should establish or strengthen, when they already have it, a centralized database that should include information on persons killed or injured by mines, and also their needs and challenges. And let me stress one point, this data should be disaggregated by gender, age, and disability, and also try to make this information available to stakeholders, always with the final goal to have a better understanding of the challenges behind all this work. And finally, where appropriate and possible, also a national referral mechanism to facilitate access to services for mine victims, including by creating and disseminating a comprehensive directory of services. These are some of the areas that the committee has turned its attention to during the work we have done this year. We appreciate the wealth of information that the states have provided in implementation of their victim assistance effort in your Article 7 reports. And we have used this time to review this information and draft preliminary observation, beginning to develop a baseline where state parties are in the process of implementation for the commitments taken under the Oslo Action Plan. We will ask you now that you review the observation we have prepared on your states, and please do it carefully, providing us with additional information that will correct, clarify, or complement the information you have submitted. Let me ask to please provide this response, this new information, no later than the first week of August, if it's possible, because then we should have the time to work on the new information that you can provide. Well, as you might be aware, looking at the agenda, the program of this intersessional, during the panels, we have decided to host a special one devoted to safety and protection of mine survivors in situations of risk and humanitarian emergency, which is a relatively new action adopted by the state parties. As somebody could have thought that this is an issue, a topic that we picked due to the COVID-19 situation, but it was not the case. We already started thinking about this issue at the end of last year, at the very beginning of 2020. But then the pandemic arrived. So we believe that this topic is very relevant right now. And we really will welcome you to join us for this important panel discussion, because as the pandemic has demonstrated, no country can spare their efforts in responding to such a situation. We look forward to working with you on the road to the 18 MSP to ensure that we can accurately assess the status of our efforts in this regard. And our hope is that we can also, once again, bring victim assistance experts together during the 18 MSP to follow up on our discussion we had in Oslo last year. The committee looks forward to working with you this year to further our implementation efforts in this regard. I will be very glad if any of you would join me or ask to have a bilateral meeting with me. Please consider us at your disposal. And thank you very much for all the contribution you made towards this meeting. Over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, colleague Tancredi. Thank you for the information you provided, and we would like to join you in calling all to join our panels, different panels, including the panel of the victim assistance, and different panels that will be throughout the days to come. And also will join you that information being offered by the countries, and this is an important thing that we should rely on. So please do every state to provide the information at the right time. Now I would like to give the floor to the chair of the committee on Article 5 implementation, our colleague Mr. Jerome Colard-Brolo, the representative of Canada. The floor is yours, Jerome.
Thank you very much, President, and good afternoon, everyone. Just to give our English-speaking colleagues a chance to get their interpretation switched on. So, dear colleagues, it's an honour for me to speak as the chair of Committee on Article 5 implementation. This year it's presided by Canada, and we're working with Austria, Norway and Zambia. For those of you who are less familiar with the committee's work, our purpose is to intensify efforts, including efforts under the Oslo Action Plan, to ensure that the obligations of state parties under Article 5 are fully implemented as soon as possible. We work on reviewing relevant information provided by states parties on Article 5 implementation and the implementation of commitments contained in the Oslo Action Plan, the presentation of preliminary observations at intersessional meetings, and conclusions and recommendations at the meeting of states parties in November. The preparation and submitting in advance of the meeting of states parties analysis of requests for Article 5 extensions, and lastly, consideration in each aspect of our work matters related to gender equality and the different needs and experiences of persons in affected communities. In implementing the committee's mandate at this meeting, we are putting forward preliminary observations that were based on information provided by states parties within Article 7 reports, as well as in updated work plans and extension requests. These observations are available on the Convention website, and they will be sent to concerned states with a number of requests for additional information. I would like to thank all states that have worked with the committee and provided information on their Article 5 implementation efforts. I would also like to congratulate states on progress that has been achieved so far, and I assure you of our full support in your implementation of Article 5. From our observations, I would like to say that we've seen a slight increase compared to last year in the number of transparency reports submitted under Article 7, which are currently being processed, and they're currently implementing Article 5. We've also seen a number of cases an increase in the quality of the reports. All the same, a number of states implementing Article 5 obligations have not submitted reports, and this is for several years. This is a source of concern. Our committee would like to stress the importance of submitting outstanding reports in order to inform states parties of the progress made in the implementation of the Convention. We recognise that COVID-19 has made this year more challenging for everybody. In many cases, this has led to Article 7 reports, work plans, or extension requests being submitted late or not yet having been submitted. In some cases, we have seen this occur. In such cases, the committee reiterates its invitation to state parties to communicate with us and provide an update on the progress of the outstanding documents. Following the adoption of the Oslo Action Plan, we need to develop a baseline on the implementation of Article 5 and the relevant commitments of the Oslo Action Plan, including those related to mine risk education. In order to have the most accurate picture possible, it's essential that outstanding reports are submitted as soon as possible. We count on your collaboration to this effect and remain available to assist if that be necessary. With regard to extension requests, which are a key aspect of our committee's work, I will be providing an update later today at the beginning of the session where states parties will have the opportunity to present their extension requests. Finally, I would like to underline that our committee has organised an expert discussion, a panel, which will be held tomorrow afternoon on addressing anti-personnel mines of an improvised nature under the Convention's framework. We hope that you will be able to join us for this event. Dear colleagues, our committee is honoured to work with you in this first year of the implementation of the Oslo Action Plan and on the road to the 18th meeting of states parties. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us for any support that we could provide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jerome. I would like to join you in calling different states to approach you and to send their extension request as soon as possible. We know there is many difficulties being faced by many states due to this COVID-19 situation, which is still we have in many parts of the world, and some parts are even now more. But also we ask and request them they can also send their request to the committee as soon as they can. So thank you so much. Let me now give the floor to our colleague, the chair of the Committee of Enhancement of Cooperation and Assistance, Mr. Simon Cloberry, the representative of UK. So, Mr. Simon, the floor is over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to join you and others in welcoming participants to the 2020 virtual Intersessionals meeting. And if I may add my best wishes to everyone, particularly at this worrying time given the COVID-19 pandemic, wherever you are in the world dialing into these meetings this week. Mr. President, the United Kingdom chairs the Committee on the Enhancement of Cooperation and Assistance and works together with representatives from Colombia, Germany, and Turkey. The committee was established to assist the states parties in the full implementation of Article 6 of the Convention And our mandate, in short, is to promote cooperation and assistance, facilitate the fostering of partnerships, and coordinate with other implementation mechanisms established by the states parties. As with other committees, since the fourth review conference, we are also mandated to review relevant information provided by the states parties on the implementation of the commitments of the Oslo Action Plan and to consider matters related to gender and diversity. And also to present preliminary observations at intersessional meetings, which I will do today, and conclusions at meetings of states parties later in the year. The committee's preliminary observations are online for your review. Like other committee chairs, we're grateful for the information submitted by states, and in our case, particularly on their efforts to finance their mine action programs, to strengthen dialogues with stakeholders, and to stimulate regional, international, and South-South cooperation, as well as on how gender and diversity are considered in the implementation of their mine action programs. Mr. President, one of the main activities of the committee has been supporting states in taking advantage of the individualized approach, as specifically mentioned in Action 43 of the Oslo Action Plan. For those not familiar with the individualized approach, put simply, it is a platform for states parties seeking support for their convention implementation efforts to meet with states parties and organizations in a position to provide this support. We encourage states in need of assistance to contact our committee or the ISU for further information in this regard. And this week, I'm particularly pleased to say that our committee will be supporting Niger in organizing its individualized approach meeting. And many of you will have received an invitation from Niger to that meeting. Mr. President, at the fourth review conference, the committee presented a short paper on national mine action platforms, which continue to promote and encourage states parties to look at establishing mine action platforms. We consider these platforms critical to ensuring that the dialogue between stakeholders remains robust at the national level. The call for greater dialogue between stakeholders is a commitment of both the Maputo and the Oslo action plans. Our aim is to continue to promote these platforms. We're convinced that a mine action program that ensures an ongoing, transparent, and honest dialogue with all stakeholders stands a better chance of success and will ensure that the necessary resources flow to support implementation efforts. We also view this as an essential part of national ownership, which Ambassador Toscano talked about earlier, which we view as the foundation for cooperation and assistance. Mr. President, since April, we have reviewed information submitted by states parties on their national and international efforts to promote cooperation and assistance. And together with my other chairs, I thank those states that have submitted information in this regard. As I already said, our preliminary observations are online, but perhaps just to highlight a couple of key observations. We welcome the information submitted on the commitment of resources, in particular on alternative sources of funding. However, we would welcome more reporting on how states parties are exploring possible alternative and/or innovative sources of funding, as mentioned in Action 42 of the Oslo Action Plan. Our committee will be doing some further thinking on this in the second half of the year. There was some excellent reporting from a few states on their efforts to ensure that gender and diversity are integrated into their cooperation and assistance efforts. However, we would welcome more reporting on this from other states parties. A reminder that Action 47 of the Oslo Action Plan specifically commits states to share experience of integrating gender and taking the diverse needs and experiences of people in affected communities into account in their programming. Mr. President, this week our committee will also hold a panel discussion entitled Aligning Donor Coordination to Support Implementation of the Oslo Action Plan. The discussion will focus on 4 areas: donor coordination, national ownership, South-South cooperation, and gender and diversity. And we do hope that as many of you as possible will be able to join us this afternoon, 5 p.m. Geneva time this afternoon, for that panel discussion. It just remains for me to thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to present the work of the committee, and we look forward to carrying out our work in cooperation with you and all the other committee chairs and everyone involved with the convention on the road to the 18th MSP. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much. Thank you for the information you provided and your effort, and your colleague in the committee of victim assist on cooperation. And let me stress once more, and to keep this positive momentum maintained, and to thank also Niger for accepting to participate in this intersessional meeting, and to call all others also to have some part in our discussions, and at the same time in many issues that will be coming during our meeting, and we welcome any initiatives, including the transparency report that is being called for. Having said this, let me go to our next participant in this panels, our colleague Grisel, the representative, the focal point for our committee in the gender issues, and the member of, at the same time, she is a member of the compliance committee, Grisel Reyes. She is the representative of Panama. You welcome, Grisel.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and a privilege to deliver this statement on behalf of the gender focal points of the Anti-Personnel Mine Convention. Across the globe, many innocent and defenseless civilians continue to be exposed to serious suffering and casualties caused by anti-personnel mines, living in fear due to this threat. While we recognize that these weapons are indiscriminate in nature, their effects vary according to gender, age, disability, ethnicity, and other aspects of diversity. Let me give you an example. Men are more likely to be physically injured by landmines and may face exclusion from their communities if they are unable to fulfill their traditional roles, whereas women survivors are more likely to be neglected if they can no longer accomplish their conventional tasks within their own family. We have observed throughout the last decades that mine action takes place in contexts where there are differences and inequalities between women, men, boys, and girls, and between diverse groups in terms of the role, behavior, activities, and responsibilities assigned to them. This dynamic influences the likelihood of becoming a landmine victim, the ability to access medical care, assistance, and reintegration programs, risk education and mine awareness resources and information, as well as the decision-making capacities of affected communities. The international community has for some time now been aware of the importance of considerations of gender and diversity for the effective implementation of the Convention. Since the third review conference in Maputo, there has been a growing understanding of the need to systematically integrate gender and the diverse needs of affected communities within all aspects of the Convention's work. It was last year at the fourth review conference, with the adoption of the Oslo Action Plan, that we put further emphasis on these matters and set ambitious actions for implementing the Convention in the most effective, efficient, and inclusive way possible, more so than any other previous review conferences. Action 3 of the Oslo Action Plan commits state parties to ensure that the different needs and perspectives of women, girls, boys, and men are considered and inform all areas of Convention implementation and mine action programming in order to deliver an inclusive approach. Also, state parties will strive to remove barriers to full, equal, and gender-balanced participation in mine action and in Convention meetings. Moreover, the Oslo Action Plan affirms that states parties will carry out their mine action and victim assistance programs in a way that is sensitive to gender, age, disability, and that take the diverse needs and experiences of people in affected communities into account as they implement their respective obligations under the Convention. In order to ensure that gender and diversity considerations were not just nice words on paper, but to be integrated in the working methods and machinery of the Convention, each committee was given the responsibility to appoint a focal point among its members to provide advice on gender mainstreaming and ensure that the diverse needs and experiences of people in affected communities are taken into account in implementation of the Convention. In this context, Chile, Colombia, Norway, and my own country, Panama, are proud to be the first gender focal points of the Anti-Personnel Mind-Bind Convention. The mandates of the committees were also expanded to consider matters related to gender and the diverse needs and experiences of people in affected communities in every aspect of its work. It is important to underscore that while the focal point has been appointed by every committee, the chair of the committee and the committee as a whole has a responsibility to guarantee that we consider gender and diversity in our work. Let us be clear. Integrating gender and diversity in our mind action and victim assistance programming should not be seen as an additional requirement or workload. It is about ensuring that our actions are better targeted and more responsive to the concrete needs of women, men, children, and diverse groups, and those achieving greater results. The inclusion of gender-specific actions and indicators in the Oslo Action Plan, as well as mainstreaming gender and diversity in the committee structures, could set a positive example for other disarmament fora and promote the connections between mine actions and the SDGs, highlighting the contribution of a gender-responsive mine action to the achievement of sustainable development, including gender equality and peaceful and inclusive societies. One of the main challenges states parties are currently facing is how to translate these commitments into reality, how to integrate diversity and gender-responsive actions, and an inclusive approach in policy making and planning at the national level. For this reason, we would like to take this opportunity to invite states parties and other stakeholders to actively engage in our panel discussion on effective implementation for all, gender and diverse needs in practice, that will take place this afternoon at 3 p.m. Geneva time. The aim of the panel discussion is precisely to address these challenges and share experiences in the application of these issues for the effective implementation of the Convention and the Oslo Action Plan. In the meantime, we would like to encourage all states parties to pay particular attention to these aspects of the Oslo Action Plan in their reporting obligations in order to help us to implement our mandate. It is important that you provide us with information on how your state ensures the integration and mainstreaming of gender considerations and take the diverse needs and experiences of people in affected communities into account in mine action programming. This includes your state's efforts to carry out its clearance, mine risk education, and victim assistance activities, as well as how your state considers these matters in providing cooperation and assistance. In addition, we call upon states to ensure the active and meaningful participation of women across all aspects of convention implementation, including in leadership roles. To sum up, making progress in this regard will be our collective responsibility. We have the opportunity to mind action to promote this kind of positive change in our societies. Let's take advantage of this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Grisel. Well said and well expressed. One of the issues that we made in our presidency to work for is the inclusion and mainstreaming of gender issues in this convention. And this shows the way forward. And I would like to join Grisel in calling you to be part of the panel that will take place today at 3 o'clock for this important issue. We have been working in our convention within our committees to make focal point for each committee on these gender issues, and we will be working for this in the future. So without further ado, allow me to say few words on behalf of the Committee on Cooperative Compliance, which is our committee. And it's a pleasure for Sudan to lead the Committee on Cooperative Compliance, which is composed of representatives from Iraq, Panama, Poland, and Switzerland. As many of you know, the committee was created with the purpose to assist the state parties in acting upon their commitments under Article 8.1 of the Convention, to work together in a spirit of cooperation to facilitate the compliance in supportive and in amicable way. The committee has continued its work on following up on matters related to alleged use of anti-personnel mine with Sudan, Ukraine, and Yemen. We have met meetings with all these states and appreciate their active involvement and dialogue with the committee over the last years. You will be also able to appreciate the status of this dialogue in the committee's preliminary observation on the convention website. I would like to all of you to go for those observations, also for the observations made by other committees, so as to maybe you can have questions about this when discussing during the panels. We have also continued our practice of meeting with civil society organizations. This year, we continued our open dialogue with Human Rights Watch and the ICVL, CMC, and others to discuss any new allegations that may have surfaced. But fortunately, there was none appeared at this point of time. In addition, following the engagement with Ukraine over the past years, an engagement with civil society concerning allegations of use in Ukraine, the committee decided that there was no reason to consider that matter and within its purview at this stage, but the same will be proposed to the 18th meeting of the state parties. With the expansion of the mandate of the committee, we have also added reflections on Article 7 reporting on the situation concerning the national legislation and under Article 9, important measures to ensure compliance. These are two areas in which we as a community need to make some remarkable improvements. Notwithstanding the fact that many states have delayed their report due to the situation caused by COVID-19, which is understandable, over 100 states, unfortunately, state parties have not submitted reports in 2020. So this is a big number actually attributed to the situation that we are facing altogether. But we hope that will be changing and many states will be able to present their and to submit their reports very soon. Together with the members of the committee, we will be reaching out other states to ensure that their reports are submitted in the near future in line with their obligation under Article 7 of the Convention. Concerning national legislation under Article 9, you will see that 53 state parties will have to report their Article 9 implementation report. We must do better in this. We must do better in this regard, and the committee will be working with our partners to make sure that we make progress in this regard. I'd like then once again to thank you. Let me thank you, all of you, for participation, and it's an honor for Sudan as well as for me personally to be able to preside over this successful humanitarian disarmament instrument. Allow me also, maybe I would like to, before concluding this, to give the floor to the ISU director, Mr. Juan Carlos, and I thank him for assistance and all efforts made, and his colleagues and his team for maybe he will make some quick administrative framework. So the floor is being to you, Juan. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I hope that everyone can hear me well. And welcome to everyone. It's great to see you here, if not in Geneva, at least virtually. Just a couple of announcements to please make sure that you log in correctly with your state, organization, first name, and last name. For any technical difficulties, you'll see that at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there's a blue envelope. There you can find the moderator. Now, the moderator is not the person from the panel, but is the technical support for any problem you may have. Finally, while we go on break, we will ask you to log out of the system. This will refresh your system and ensure that you will have a fresh system to come back to after when the gender panel starts. So with that, welcome to everyone, and Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ruan, and thank you to your team. Thank for all the participants who participated today in this session, and thank to our chairs of the committee who gave their remarks today. And we are calling for all of you to continue participating in this intersessional meeting. We thank those who expressed their thank to the presidency and the chair and the ISU and all who have made a contribution to make this intersessional meeting possible, and we call upon all of you to participate during the coming sessions. And with this, let me just remind that there will be a break before we start our first panel, which will be entitled Effective Implementation for All Gender and Diverse Needs in Practice. So please join us for our next panel. And thank you so much. We are exactly on time. And thanks to everybody who joined us today. And let me say goodbye for the time. We will be having a break till we join the session for the gender. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Just let me share my screen, please.
Much better, Gona. Very glad to see this. Please.
I removed the headphone. Okay. No screen sharing then. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about MAG's gender mainstreaming efforts in Iraq program. As you may know that Iraq is one of the most affected countries of explosive ordnance, and MAG has been in Iraq doing survey, risk education and clearance since 1992 to make the land safer for the population affected by decades of conflict. And today, the explosive ordnance clearance and risk education are having a hugely constructive and a positive impact on the affected communities. Which could not have been done effectively without the integration of gender into MAG's interventions. Community liaison staff are the eyes and ears of MAG. Our teams interact on a daily basis with the communities to collect information. They conduct survey to define the extent of and the type of the contamination and its impact on the community. This informs the prioritization of the clearance process. In addition, our teams conduct life-saving risk educations to promote safe behaviors. And MAG liaison community teams activities are context-specific and age and gender appropriate. Landmine doesn't discriminate. However, gender patterns of behavior create different risks for different groups. For instance, boys and adult men are at more risk in some areas due to the activities that they typically undertake, like grazing sheep and agriculture. Women and girls, though less likely to be involved in direct accidents, they're indirect victims because they become primarily breadwinners when the head of the household is killed or injured, and they become the carer for the injured family members. During and in the immediate aftermath of conflict, gender norms are challenged. We are now seeing that in areas liberated from ISIS, gender norms are changing. And women and girls considerably more involved in agriculture and livelihood and rebuilding of houses. So MAG is responding to these changes, and we are including these women and girls to ensure their needs are addressed in our activities. MAG seeks to have women working in all of its activities where possible and culturally accepted. MAG Iraq has women at all levels of its organizational hierarchy to ensure their inputs in project design, at implementation, and at strategic and policy levels. Almost half of the female community liaison department is female. So in community liaison, we continue to have internal consultation with MAG, with both female and male staff on how to ensure our activities are accessible and reach women and diverse groups and communities. But sometimes there are challenges in accessing and getting their voices and experiences heard. This is because most village representatives are men. Therefore, our teams make sure that activities equally involve and engage men and women to collect information. In all our community meeting, risk education sessions, and focus group discussions, we encourage women and girls to actively participate and create safe spaces for women to feel more comfortable providing their inputs. And without our CL teams, there would be a significant obstacle in accessing this information from women and minority of groups and having it forming survey clearance and risk education activities. Iraq has a long and proud history of cultural and ethnic diversity. Arabic and Kurdish are Iraq's official languages, but there are also various languages and dialects spoken by different ethnic groups. So community liaison teams are hired from the local community, and each team consists of one man and one woman who speaks the local languages, and some of them speak more than 2 languages. And our awareness materials we use to disseminate safety messages are field tested with different gender and age groups and are printed in several languages to ensure they are accessible to all. Sorry. And when communities see that MAG respect their language and culture, it not only helps to get the message across, but also build their trust and confidence in MAG. And gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but it's a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. One of the main lessons learned from MAG's experience in Iraq is that when women are given opportunities, they develop a stronger self-esteem, and when they are actively encouraged to apply for jobs in mine action, they take these opportunities with courage. Women are increasingly taking opportunities to work with MAG, including leading roles. In 2016, MAG opened opportunities to hire women deminers in Sinjar district, and many women enthusiastically joined MAG and continue today to clear deadly explosive ordnance from their communities. We are also trying to increase women's participation in other areas of our work, such as looking at how to we can increase the number of female community focal points. They are the ones in community that are trained by MAG to report contamination and to replicate safety messages to the people in the communities. The majority of focal points are men due to the position they traditionally hold in community decision making. So MAG is planning to build the trust and confidence among women in order to give them such responsibilities to support MAG activities in the field and raise the profile of what women can do to support in mine action. Furthermore, we have learned that our community female staff, liaison staff, can also act as role models for the women in more conservative communities. They are sharing success stories, experiences, and positive conversation, which have a power that can challenge the status quo. Internally within MAG, stronger safeguarding policies and guidelines to strengthen gender equality has resulted in women in the organization showing a greater openness to raising their voices, which showed they are feeling more comfortable. Although we are currently seeing massive positive changes in equal treatment of women in many areas where we work in Iraq, conservative culture and customs prevent women from being treated equally, which impacts our work. Men continue to take the lead in making decisions, which emphasizes their point of views and doesn't take into consideration those of women. This is a challenge, and MAC continues to try and enable women to step forward. And it's clear that MAC cannot stand alone to integrate gender into mine action. This should be seen as a national issue where the change should happen at the policy level from the top decision-making individuals down to the community level. Thank you. That was my presentation.
Thank you very much, Gona. That was another excellent presentation. This panel has been rock solid. Thank you very much. As you said, as community liaison, you are the eyes and the ears, and it is, of course, very important that these eyes and ears hear and see everyone. So thank you very much for that, Gona. And now let us turn to our last speaker of today. And she may maybe help us take a bird's eye on how to integrate gender and diverse needs into mine action. So I'm very pleased to introduce Jasmine Dan. She's the Policy and Advocacy Manager at the Halo Trust and also a member of the Informal Gender Working Group. Jasmine, please, you have the floor.
Hello. Let me just check first that my sound is coming through properly before I begin.
Excellent. Loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay. Great. So as you just said, today I'm speaking as the co-lead of the Gender Working Group alongside Meg and the Colombian Campaign, DCA, GICHD, HI, ICBL-CMC, Mines Action Canada, Mines Action Review, and NPA. We had the pleasure of working alongside Norway as last year's presidency to work to see gender and diversity mainstreamed within the Oslo Action Plan. And I think we can all agree that it sets a new standard for multilateral disarmament agreements. We're also setting new ground here today by including gender within the main agenda and not only within the side events. And I hope that's something that we see become standard and that we'll see in future meetings as well. We know that gender mainstreaming is crucial for the Convention's work, from effective clearance and survey to its role as a major employer to the importance of meaningful participation in meetings like today. But in addition to gender, the Oslo Action Plan also included diverse needs. So what do we mean by diverse needs? The action plan recognizes that the needs of people will change based on a series of factors, and that programming needs to be adapted to meet those specific needs of different groups. This is important with gender, but also other aspects of diversity. Diversity refers to all the ways in which we differ and how those differences might impact us. So that can include religion, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, a whole number of different things. For example, within Mine Action, it might involve ensuring that mine risk education materials are available in all local languages. We've heard a lot of really good examples about that in the panel already, so I won't go too much into detail. Diversity also matters within the convention itself. I'm happy to say it's not the case of the panel today, but at times we do see panels of all men or panels that only include white people from the global north. I think as a convention, we need to acknowledge this and improve on representation and meaningful participation. Since we're focusing on practical implementation during this panel today, I also want to touch on the role that donor governments can play in the implementation of the Oslo Action Plan. The job of implementing the action plan falls on all states parties to the convention, and the role of governments providing financial assistance is actually quite large. So firstly, in choosing where money goes. So donor governments have the opportunity to promote good practice in gender mainstreaming through what you're asking for or what's being required in proposals. Donors can choose to support programs that ensure there is disaggregated data and that it's being collected in an inclusive manner, and also that this data is then analyzed from a gender perspective and used to inform all different aspects of the program cycle. In reviewing proposals by mine action organizations, you also have the opportunity to ask for more. Ask for dedicated gender budgets in funding streams. Ask for strong mainstreaming. Ask for dedicated actions related to gender, and ask for funded positions to see this all realized. In addition to funding, donor governments can also work in partnership with affected states. So states parties that might have a dedicated internal gender mainstreaming capacity can offer to support or potentially even second gender advisors to other states to provide them with that specialist advice on gender mainstreaming. In addition, in partnership with affected states, raise discussions of gender and diversity mainstreaming, discuss what's being done and what more could be done. And that applies to all states, not just donor states. As we've heard today, there are some really good examples of gender and diversity mainstreaming within all of the different states of the convention. And sharing those best practices in a practical way is a really good way for us to be able to help each other along and to begin to make progress to reach a similar position. And in terms of reporting as well, donor states should also be including within their Article 7 reports measures taken to promote gender mainstreaming within mine action. I want to talk a bit more about reporting. As we heard this morning, the Oslo Action Plan includes both a specific action focusing on gender and diverse needs, as well as mainstreaming throughout the action plan. These aren't things that have been traditionally reported on by a lot of states in the past, but the only way we're going to be able to establish a strong baseline and measure progress on the Oslo Action Plan is if we have that clear data. So where should gender and diverse needs be included within Article 7 reporting? In order to respond to the indicators, states should be including information related to gender and diverse needs within a series of forms within the reporting. So Form D, G, H, and J all include places where we can add information in there. To be brief, I'm just going to include one example. So one of the indicators associated with Action 18 of the Oslo Action Plan refers to baselines established through inclusive consultations. In order to respond to this indicator, states can ensure that they are providing information on how consultations are taking place within Form D, so areas known or suspected to contain anti-personnel mines. So are diverse teams involved in gathering data? Are consultations inclusive? Does that information then inform prioritization? And if this is something that's included within a state's national strategy, include that within the response. It's the only way that we can kind of develop that clear baseline is by receiving that information. And if states would like any advice on integrating gender and diverse needs into their Article 7 reporting, I know that the gender focal points, including Hannah speaking today, are very knowledgeable about that. And in addition, they're more than welcome to reach out to ourselves, the Gender Working Group, for any additional guidance. Finally, I want to touch briefly on resources for states looking to further gender mainstreaming. In every case, the specific actions that are taken need to be tailored to the local context. However, as a good starting point, I'd encourage everyone who hasn't already to make use of the UN Gender Guidelines, recently updated in 2019, as we know, as well as the free online e-training offered by GACHG on gender and diversity. Their website also has links to other useful resources. And finally, one of the best ways that we can learn and improve is to share experiences with each other. So get in contact if one of the states that you heard today had something that seemed interesting and that there might be an opportunity to share between states and to learn from each other and to kind of further this discussion. But thank you very much, and that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. That completes a line of excellent presentations. Thank you for the challenges and the specific proposals, both for donor states and affected states, and also for highlighting reporting, the importance of that, and the resources that are available out there. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 4:01, so that means we have exhausted the time for our panel. So unfortunately, we will not have time for a question and answer session today. However, if you would like to send in your questions, we are happy to send them on to the panelists and return responses back to you. And also, I have to highlight that this panel is only the start of our conversation. We will meet again at the meeting of states parties later this year, and I hope that we will continue our conversation there. Thank you to all panelists for excellent presentations. We are in the first year of implementing the Oslo Action Plan, so it is now up to us, the states parties, in cooperation with international organizations, operators, and civil society, to bring the Oslo Action Plan, including its commitment to integrate gender and diverse needs into all our convention implementation efforts, to life. And today's panel has certainly helped identify many ideas and lessons for how to do so. So, in closing, let us redouble our efforts to ensure that the different Hold on, Jerome, please. Yeah. So let us, in closing, redouble our efforts to ensure that the different needs and perspectives of women, girls, boys, and men are considered and inform all areas of convention implementation and mine action programming. That way, our approach will not only be inclusive, it will also be more effective and contribute most efficiently towards the dual goals of a mine-free world and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And ladies and gentlemen, as we now close this panel, please stay tuned because we will begin the session on informal presentations of requests for extension to be considered by the 18th meeting of states parties. And my colleague Jerome is very soon online, so stay tuned. And thank you very much for participating in this panel. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
During today's session, states parties requesting extensions will have the opportunity to present a 5-minute summary of their request. I will then open the floor for any delegation that may wish to deliver a short 2-minute intervention on the specific request, and then we will offer the floor back briefly to the state in question for their final remarks. In addition to this session, there will be 2 other sessions relating to extension requests, one tomorrow, Wednesday, from 7:15 to
sur le processus de demande de prolongation.
From 5:15 to 6 p.m. Geneva time, and one on Thursday from 3 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. Geneva time. Before I open the floor to states, I would like to provide you with a brief update on the state of play in the process of extension requests. As many of you are aware, at the 7th MSP in 2006, states parties agreed to a process for the preparation, submission, and consideration of requests for extensions of Article 5 deadlines. The decisions taken included states parties seeking Article 5 extensions being encouraged to submit their requests no less than 9 months prior to the meeting of the states parties or review conference at which their requests would be considered. By March 31st this year, we decided that all the state parties would be informed of the following requests having been received and to make them freely accessible under the principle of transparency, which is one of the main pillars of the Convention. In line with the decision, therefore, taken by 7 MSP, the committee wrote to states parties to inform them that requests had been made prior to the deadline of 31st March. Colombia received on 18th March 2020, and South Sudan received on the 27th of March 2020. Since that time, we also received requests from the following countries, and I will read them in chronological order. Niger, 28 May 2020. Ukraine, 8 June 2020. Senegal, 16 June 2020. Bosnia-Herzegovina, 22nd June 2020, and Mauritania, 26th June 2020. In keeping with our usual practice, the committee asked that these requests be made available on the website of the Convention. We are still anticipating requests from four further states, DRC, Eritrea, and Nigeria. With a view to streamlining our work, the committee sought expert input on the request submitted. A total of 14 expert organizations have been invited, therefore, to provide their input. These organizations were selected on the understanding that they are world-leading not-for-profit organizations within terms of their demining expertise. They all have broad international experience and are knowledgeable and active contributors to the work of the Convention. Among those organizations invited to provide input, the following did with regard to one or many requests: the International Committee of the Red Cross, the International Campaign to Ban Landmines, the GICHD, Hello Trust, Humanity and Inclusion, Mine Action Review, Mines Advisory Group, the Norwegian People's Aid, and United Nations Mine Action Service. The next step will be for the Committee on Article 5 implementation to establish what further information will be required may be required from states parties to assist the Committee in analysing extension requests. Furthermore, the Committee will continue to work with states parties that have undergone delays in submitting their extension requests. As Chair of the Committee, I would like to seize this opportunity to thank states parties with whom we have had the opportunity to engage. Should this process result in states parties submitting revised extension requests, as has been the case in previous years, the Committee will inform all delegations and ensure that these requests are made available on the Convention's website. Given the time it takes to translate all of the Committee's work, we aim to complete our work by the end of the first half of September, and we thank all states parties with whom we are working for their assistance in helping us achieve this crucial goal. Finally, on behalf of the Committee, let me extend warm thanks to all states parties that are going through the process and are submitting extension requests. Your efforts to present transparently your achievements, but also to overcome your challenges, is a very telling sign of your commitment to the Convention. I will now give the floor then to Colombia, which will present its extension request. The floor is to Colombia. We are just waiting for Colombia to connect to take the floor.
La Colombie devrait prendre la parole dans un instant.
I hope you will be patient just a few seconds. We are waiting for Colombia to connect. It appears now that Colombia is ready to take the floor. It seems actually that Colombia is not ready to take the floor. Let's just look into this. The Secretariat informs me that it is trying to resolve the technical problem with Colombia, so please, if you wouldn't mind being patient just a little longer. Good day to you all. Do you hear me? Colombia, you have the floor. Can you hear me? Yes, very well. Thank you very much. A very good day to you all then. I will be presenting to you today, and if you will just bear with me 1 second, I'm looking into how to have my screen shared with you. I understand that you can, on your end, share your screen. Is that correct? Just 1 second, please. Thank you very much. On behalf of Ivan Duque Muquez, President of the Republic of Colombia, and on my own behalf, I send you all a very warm greeting. Ambassador Jerome Collard, Chair of the meeting, President of the MSP, or Ambassador Asman Abu Fatima Adam Mohammed, as well as Ambassador Stefano Toscana from GICHD. And we thank him for all of the work that has gone into making sure that this event goes ahead. Also like to thank the Article 5 Implementation Committee for this kind invitation, and I thank the ISU for its support in our request, as well as promoting mine action in Colombia. I am Miguel Ceballos. I am the High Commissioner for Peace of Colombia, and I also head up our mine action. President, in my statement, I would like to set out the current circumstances that has led our country to request a second extension of the deadline. In brief, we will show progress made in Colombia since the entry into force of the convention for our country, referring also to the characteristics of the request and the capacities we have to deal with anti-personnel mine contamination in our country. Finally, we will look at action and progress thanks to the work of the Colombian state, and despite the constraints that have befallen us thanks to COVID-19. Colombia ratified the convention in 2000, and it entered into force in 2001. The first 2 decades, we worked to create and strengthen our institutions. Then, by 2002, we set up an APM observatory, aiming to collect data on events. In 2019, comprehensive action against anti-personnel mines, a national government strategy led by my office, from which there are different functions set out, such as victim assistance, promoting action within communities against risk, taking into account a differential approach, as well as territory clearance. In addition, thanks to a participatory process, we set out technical documents to ensure it's complied with our extension request. We have been working on a public policy to set up a National Economic and Social Policy Council to develop the necessary action to ensure Colombia be free of anti-personnel mines. As the Colombia state has been growing and in strengthening its institutional and public policy, it has also been consolidating its technical knowledge, helping us to achieve land release in line with the characteristics of our national contamination. Between 2001 and 2010, there was an emergency situation due to an increase in the number of victims, added to which insufficient information for prevention and assistance. 78% of those affected during this period, as you can see from this map, highlighted in red, were in areas where there is widespread contamination and 12 areas undergoing operation. As of 2011, we've made significant progress in building capacity to deal with mines, as well as a methodology that has set out the methods and priorities for intervention. Thanks also to specialized institutions created for comprehensive victim assistance in the context of the armed conflict, as well as through strengthening technical spaces for coordination for comprehensive mine action and assistance to victims. We have trained the Humanitarian Demining Engineers Brigade and the National Navy's Explosives and Demining Group. This has increased our national capacity to tackle the problem. We have also accredited civilian humanitarian demining organizations. In this period, we also signed the final peace agreement with the former FARC guerrillas. This was a boost to the security situation in a range of territories and opened the way for demining operations. Victim registration was 22% between 2011 and May 2020 nationally. Likewise, in the framework and the context of preparing this extension request, we strengthened the coordination between comprehensive mine action and other strategic policies in the country, such as land restitution, development programs with territorial focus, and the National Comprehensive Program for the substitution of illicit crop use, the implementation of a program for strategic zones for comprehensive intervention, as well as promoting the achievement of the UNDP Goal 16. Another priority in the new extension request is the sustainability of allocated humanitarian demining operations and the updating of risk management methodologies. We're currently working on updating national standards, such as a national technical standard, and prioritizing and allocating new areas to begin humanitarian demining. Similarly, now I am happy to show you the results, particularly with regard to where we have strengthened our capacity to deal with mines, and particularly anti-personnel mines. At the outset of the first decade, there were just 4 towns where demining was underway. In the first extension request, in 2010, we presented an operational plan which proposed to increase intervention to 14 towns. And by the end of 2019, there are 156 towns under demining and 391 towns that have been declared free of mines, out of 720 where there is some contamination. As of December 2019, these advances have led to cumulative clearance of more than 6 million square kilometers and the destruction of 3,733 improvised anti-personnel mines. This clearance has had a direct impact on more than 14 million Colombians who live in towns which have been declared free of mines and who make up 30% of the national population. Currently, these people benefit from land restitution, as well as the return of the population that was displaced following the armed conflict, as well as social impact plans that have been set up to address national territorial development programs. The request for extension is supported by the 2020-2025 Humanitarian Demining Operational Plan and proposes as its main goal to complete currently active operations while prioritizing and assigning new areas of intervention, of course, as long as security conditions are sufficient for us to do so. Colombia submitted its second extension request to the ISU for the extension of the deadline under Article 5. The period is 4 years, 10 months from 1st March 2021 to 31st December 2025. The period is in line with Colombia's 2020-2025 strategic plan and the operational plan for humanitarian demining for the same period. The task of clearing this extension request corresponds to the clearing of more than 8 million confirmed hazardous areas identified and set out through non-technical studies conducted in 156 towns. The known unknown areas are actually 166 towns, in which events related to anti-personnel mines have occurred and where there are insufficient security conditions for humanitarian demining. Given the presence of non-state armed groups who continue to use anti-personnel mines, preventing the restitution of land rights and guarantees of non-repetition. There are undoubtedly several challenges we have as a state: the nature of the mines, the dispersion and density of the contamination, the topographical and climatic conditions, requirements of linking the diverse approach that implies the agreement of demining actions with agreement with ethnic communities with regard to demining, the difficulty of access due to lack of roads, as well as other aspects due to Colombia's territorial nature. Another challenge raised before, presence of non-state armed groups, that raises the perception of mine risk, which implies that humanitarian demining not only seeks to destroy the anti-personnel mines themselves, but also to release the land so the communities can overcome their fear of moving freely about their territories. On the other hand, data set out in the national baseline, thanks to the work of the High Commissioner for Peace and his office, and the technical assistance of the Swiss, of GICHD, we have completed analysis that states that Colombia will have a contamination density of around 2,500 square meters per mine found. In the case of mines which have become inactive with age, the mere suspicion of their presence is a cause of fear among the population. I would therefore like to highlight one particular challenge: financing of humanitarian demining operations. Colombia is making a huge budgetary effort to finance the operations in terms of its national capacity, the humanitarian demining brigade, the Navy's explosive and demining group, through the Ministry of Defense, with resources from our general national budget, making up more than $40 million per year. Furthermore, alongside national resources allocated to the Office of High Commissioner of Peace, mine risk education activities are also financed to the tune of approximately $1.4 million per year. In addition to those efforts and there is cooperation amongst agencies to take into account, and it's therefore time for me to thank and recognize particularly donor countries for the financial and technical support they have offered our country. And we call for continued support for comprehensive action against anti-personnel mines to ensure that we can achieve a mine-free Colombia. Since the declaration of the pandemic, despite the pandemic, Colombia is pleased to present the following progress. In the first half of 2020, we cleared free of mines 13 new towns, making 404 towns without contamination, and that represents some 56% of the national total. We have prioritized 20 new towns as having safe conditions, and 5 that are currently being reallocated to a new operator. To date, in the 43 towns in 13 departments, we are taking up demining once again, ensuring compliance with all health and safety requirements to tackle COVID-19. The dissemination of messages on prevention and safe behavior in the presence of anti-personnel mines has also been stepped up through for local and regional means, traditional means, such as the radio, as well as new technologies. Furthermore, the inclusion of the mine action public policy in 5 departmental development plans has also been established. Finally, in line with health protocols, 10 ethnic communities and 6 survivors associations are being hired, and this includes African descendants, to benefit from national resources and to take a differential approach in their own areas. Finally, we would like to share with you our progress on intervention plan, which has been presented to the Article 5 Committee as part of the consultation period. Colombia is fully committed to the Convention and implementation of the Oslo Action Plan. Through the plans that we have worked out, we're working with the sector, and this has been the basis for our extension request. Thank you very much. In particular, thanks to those members states that make up the Article 5 Committee, and a warm warm greeting to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colombia. Please let me assure you that you enjoy our full support over the next stages of the request process. So now I would like to open the floor to all delegations who would like to make comments. Please 2 minutes maximum. I believe that there is a speakers list already produced by the Secretariat. And I see the ICBL. You will take the floor first. ICBL, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Colombia. We would like to congratulate Colombia for this very extensive request and on time. There's very clear information, very detailed information on their mine action efforts, which have been carried over the last 9 years, and a plan for the next 4 years, 10 months that Colombia is requesting. While we appreciate that Colombia is not requesting additional time beyond 2025, it's unclear whether Colombia intends to address all existing contamination in the country within that requested period. Does Colombia intend to clear the contamination both within the 156 accessible municipalities as well as the 166 inaccessible municipalities by 2025? And if the 166 inaccessible municipalities are not included, can Colombia clarify what their plan is to address the remaining areas? There are a number of positive points of the request. We see the following. Colombia has made significant progress in terms of gaining understanding of remaining contamination, having cleared a significant amount of land. With regard to the overall management of its mine action program in the last 9 years. There is a work plan for the 156 municipalities for ongoing demining operations. In the request, there is a budget for mine risk education. Approximately 30% of funding for mine action will come from the national budget. We see that there are a number of points requiring additional clarification. The request puts forward how much land was cleared in the 156 accessible municipalities to date. However, it is unclear whether any of this land was actually released through survey. Colombia should clarify this by reporting on land release, disaggregated by non-technical surveys, technical surveys, and clearance. There is a lack of clarity with regard to the plan for the remaining tasks within the 156 accessible municipalities. In addition to 3.3 square kilometers of confirmed hazardous areas, which are left to be cleared, there's approximately 4.9 square kilometers of suspected hazardous areas that have not yet been surveyed. This would indicate a combined total of 8.2 square kilometers still to be addressed within the accessible municipalities. Will both confirmed hazardous areas and suspected hazardous areas in these 156 municipalities be addressed during this period? Now, within the 106 currently inaccessible municipalities due to security reasons, there's been no clearance or survey, and as such there is no baseline. The request refers to a re-evaluation of the security context in 2023, as well as a micro-targeting methodology which is planned for 2024-25, which aims at establishing an estimate of contamination in those inaccessible municipalities. Colombia should provide clarification on how this process will work and whether it intends to clear the remaining 166 municipalities before 2025. And to conclude, it would be useful if Colombia could provide more information on the ongoing dialogue processes with armed groups and the implementation of the peace agreement. Particularly, it would be useful to hear what the likelihood of gaining access to the 166 municipalities will be over the next 5 years. Colombia has presented a very clear budget, indicating that approximately 70% of the required funding will come from the donor community. This is indicated in the budget. Colombia should clarify the amount that is already secured from the government and donors and present a mobilization strategy for resources for the additional required funding. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, ICBL. Thank you very much, ICBL. I can see that we have already run out of time, but I've been informed that the interpreters have kindly provided us with 7 additional minutes. So I see Mine Action Review is next, as well as the GICDH. So I would please ask you to be as brief as is possible, and if you can, stick to 2 minutes so that Colombia might be able to give a response after your discussions. Thank you very much. Mine Action Review, it's over to you.
You are muted, Lucy. Can you unmute your mic, please?
Without, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Sorry about that. I'll deliver a shorter version of the statement and then I'll deliver the full version online in the interest of timekeeping. And I won't repeat what my colleague from ICBL has already said about the clarity in the baseline of contamination. Just to raise a couple more points of interest, Mine Action Review would like to reiterate the need for evidence-based survey to confirm mine contamination before full clearance is conducted. And this is highlighted by the fact that Colombia reports in its extension requests that on average 38% of mined areas cleared had no explosive devices found. In Annex 9 of the request, Colombia refers to the development and adoption of a new land release standard in 2020. We would welcome Colombia providing more details of its plans for the new land release standard, and in particular confirmation that the new standard will be in line with international mine action standards and will help reduce the currently unacceptably high level of clearance of mined areas in which no mines are found. Likewise, in Annex 9, it also refers to a review of the method of assigning tasks and to the reassignment of tasks. We would welcome Colombia providing more information on this and how the national authority anticipates it will improve efficiency, ensure operators are tasked and deployed efficiently with the ability to adapt to a changing security environment so that they are not standing idle with no task to complete. Annex 9 also makes reference to the new external quality management procedures, the retraining of personnel and a new quality management strategy. And we also welcome these reported measures as there have been reported issues with the existing quality management process causing unnecessary delays. I think I'll leave it at that and submit a full statement online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mine Action Review, for being so brief. Now I'll give the floor to GICHD.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Excellent. I will try and keep it brief as well. The GICHD would like to congratulate the Government of Colombia on the development and submission of their recent Article 5 extension request for 4 years and 10 months. It's clear that a considerable amount of work has obviously gone into developing this request until the 31st of December 2025. We believe the document itself is well constructed and includes a significant amount of detail, including important data and statistics. Based on a review of the request, it is clear that certain overarching contextual factors exist that might potentially impede Colombia's ability to address all known contamination within the requested extension period. And notably, as the Colombian Office for the High Commissioner for Peace has correctly highlighted, the existing security situation, and in particular, the use of improvised anti-personnel mines by organized armed groups, is one of the challenges for achieving completion. And as my colleagues have already mentioned, the Mine Action Programme appears to be facing challenges gaining a truly accurate, evidence-based account of the extent of anti-personnel mine contamination. Particularly in the 165 municipalities where security concerns hinder access, it would be extremely useful if Colombia could include an overview on how it plans to attain this information. The request predicts that by 2025, according to the operational plan, the average productivity will be around 30% higher than that which has been recorded by the programme in recent years. Such an aspiration is to be commended. However, it would be useful to the reader if the document could include further details on how such improved productivity will be achieved. In more general terms, the extension request demonstrates significant efforts to reflect or address different needs and perspectives of women, girls, boys and men, which is in line with Action 3 of the Oslo Action Plan. It is also clear from the document that Colombia has prioritized the strengthening of its risk education programming in recent years, an important development for the Mine Action Programme, which is also in line with Action 24 of the Oslo Action Plan. And the GICHD also recognizes that Colombia has made significant improvements in information management. And whilst further efforts are undoubtedly still required, the recent enhancements in data entry from operators and the integration of multiple IM systems will help contribute to the realization of Action 9 of the Oslo Action Plan. The GICHD would like to again commend Colombia for submitting such a detailed Article 5 extension request and to reaffirm its commitment to supporting Colombia on its path to completion. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the GICHD, thank you. Before I give the floor back to Colombia for a very brief response to the comments, I've been told that the Halo Trust would like to make a number of comments, but has accepted to send those comments in a written form so that they are published. So thank you for having agreed to that. And without further ado, I'll give the floor back to Colombia. Thank you very much for the comments. I would like to stress something which is key in the operative plan, which has been designed. This was developed in conjunction with all humanitarian demining organizations and operators on the territory, including the Colombian campaign. It's very clear to stress that we do have a major challenge. We do have 165 municipalities which are not currently sufficiently secure. As we were explaining, there are actions carried out by non-state armed groups which challenge the work of the state. This is a rather significant obstacle, but through a law, we have been able to set out the comprehensive strategic plan, which has been approved by the government, and this will be part of the comprehensive approximation, which will try to guarantee our presence in those areas and guarantee justice in the country. Secondly, we would like to thank those comments made with regard to the extensive nature of this request. We have developed a number of national standards. These have been the fruit of a lot of work. We have produced a number of technical standards, which will be available on our website. through these standards, we really have developed good requirements and prerequisites for humanitarian demining, and this allows us to manage the situation a lot better. For task assignment, this is now done publicly. It wasn't previously done in this way. It was previously through it's now a very transparent mechanism through requests for proposals, and we hope that over the next 5 years we will be able to clear all of those municipalities which are currently receiving interaction. We hope that that will be possible. Of course, every country faces challenges. We will do everything we can to achieve clearance in these areas, but as the operative plan says, there are a great number of challenges to face up to. With regard to funding, it's not 70% from international cooperation. It's actually less than 50%. And that's very clearly explained in the document. Our national capacity by 2020 is $146 million, which will be less than 50%. So that's why we would like to launch a call to the international community to support Colombia in this exercise. And because we now have 404 communities free of anti-personnel mines, and we are confident that we will continue to make progress over the next 5 years. And that's why I would like to thank the Convention and the Committee on Article 5 implementation for all of the support, and thank to the ISU as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Colombia. That's our time up today. I would like to thank all of those who took the floor, and also the chair extends this thanks to the interpreters. And thanks them very much for having provided extra time. We will continue with this at 5:30 tomorrow afternoon, and this is the end of the session. Thank you all.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Simon Cleabury. I'm from the UK mission. I'm actually just testing the microphone to see whether this is working properly for the next session. The next session is a panel discussion on aligning donor coordination to support implementation of the Oslo Action Plan. And we're going to start in 2 minutes. We're looking forward to a rich discussion and looking forward to hearing your views on this very important topic. So we'll start in just a couple of minutes. Thank you. Yes, please. Yeah. No, I'm okay, thanks. Lovely. Thank you very much. Juan Carlos, you said here you give me a few admin issues. The admin homework, the kind of housekeeping. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's okay. Have all the panelists raised their hands? Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, and on the questions. Yeah, that's probably enough, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, great. So should we get going? Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. I think we will get started. A very warm welcome to this panel discussion on aligning donor coordination to support implementation of the Oslo Action Plan. I'll just start with a little bit of housekeeping, just to ask that all participants make sure that their hands are lowered, but make sure if you're a panelist, please could you raise your virtual hand now so that we can, so you're easily identifiable and we can give you the floor seamlessly when it's your turn to speak. The panelists will make their presentations at the start, and then we will move to a question and answer session. We've already received some questions via email. And of course, if you have a question that comes up as you listen to the presentations, please feel free to put that question in the chat function, and we will try and pick up on that question if there is time. We won't have a huge amount of time for questions, but we will try to pick up on as many as we possibly can. And finally, just a reminder to everyone, including myself, to speak slowly to help our interpreters. So let's get cracking with our discussion. I just have a few remarks to set the scene. International cooperation and assistance has always been a key component of the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention and its implementation. In fact, since the negotiations of the treaty, a number of states have been clear that they require cooperation and assistance in order to implement the provisions of the convention. Likewise, states parties have recorded time and time again that while states are ultimately responsible for implementing the convention in areas under their jurisdiction or control, the convention's shared goals can be advanced through enhanced cooperation. For this reason, since the first review conference, the states parties have adopted action plans that contain actions related to cooperation and assistance, including in the Nairobi, Cartagena, Maputo, and of course, most recently last November, the Oslo Action Plan. Importantly, at the third review conference in Maputo, the states parties committed to intensify their efforts to complete the convention's time-bound obligations to the fullest extent possible by 2025. At the fourth review conference, the states parties recommitted to making progress towards this aim by adopting the Oslo Action Plan 2019 to 2024 as an essential tool towards the fulfillment of this ambition. The Oslo Action Plan includes several actions aimed at enhancing cooperation and assistance in order to meet the Convention's obligations. There are also some interesting new elements to consider, such as the encouragement for states parties to demonstrate high levels of national ownership, the encouragement of states parties to ensure sustained dialogue at an international and national level on progress, challenges, and requirements for assistance, the encouragement of states in a position to provide assistance to support evidence-based national strategies and work plans, and importantly, to coordinate their support. And finally, to encourage more cooperation, including South-South cooperation. We also adopted the Oslo Declaration, in which we committed to strengthen national ownership and international cooperation and assistance, and to strengthen partnerships and to sustain, and where necessary, increase resources, assistance, national and international funding. Today, I have 5 speakers with me that will look at the different aspects of these points. Firstly, we have Sergio Larraín-Bart, Disarmament Specialist, International Cooperation Unit, Office of the Undersecretary of Defense, the Ministry of National Defense of Chile. As you should all know by now, Chile has recently completed the enormous effort of addressing mined areas, and we will hear from Sergio on how they managed to get the job done by ensuring strong national ownership as defined by the states parties, and some of the lessons learned. Then we will hear from Wolfgang Binzal, who works at the German Foreign Ministry, who is the current chair of the Mine Action Support Group. Wolfgang will talk to us about how the MASG supports donor coordination. Next, we will hear from Joe Shapiro, Mine Action Policy and program lead at DFID in the UK. Joe's been working on Joe's been doing some work on donor coordination, particularly on the benefits of aligning donor theories of change in indicators. We'll then hear from Jun Yamada, First Secretary and Defense Attaché, the delegation of Japan here in Geneva. Jun will share with us some of the efforts that are ongoing in terms of South-South cooperation and the importance of this issue. And finally, we will hear from Diana Esperanza Castillo Castro, who is the Second Secretary at the Colombian Mission here in Geneva and a member of our committee. And she is in fact our gender focal point. And she will be saying a few words about the importance of gender and diversity. So without any further ado, and with big congratulations to Chile, I would like to turn the floor now to Sergio Larraín-Bart of Chile. Sergio, you have the floor.
Distinguished Chairman, distinguished delegates, I would like to greet you and thank you for the opportunity to share with you how it has taken national ownership and its commitment to the Mine-Ban Treaty and how this was key to our success. States parties defined national ownership in 4 points that, I will go on to explain, were key to Chile's success. The first is maintaining a high level of interest in the fulfillment of obligations of the Convention. In our country, we have taken a bottom-up approach through interministerial work, coordinated work, through management by the National Commission. Our country participated in the entire process for adopting the Convention through delegates of the MFA, Ministry of Defense, and once the Convention was signed, Chile immediately initiated ratification procedures through its National Congress. In the meantime, 26 April 1999, Chile officially declared a unilateral moratorium on the production, export, import, and installation of new anti-personnel landmines. Congressional process was long and not without difficulty, but finally, 8th May 2001, the Convention was approved by Congress, and on September 10th, 2001, Chile deposited with the United Nations headquarters in New York its ratification instrument. Consistent with this document, it thereafter entered into force on 1st March 2002. Once ratified by Congress, an organization had to be created to coordinate the activities. Then, following that, on 2nd May 2002, we created the National Demining Commission, a public organization which is multi-sectoral and has a national character. It advises the President of the Republic and coordinates mine action activities. It's chaired by the National Defense Minister and is composed of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Under Secretaries of Finance and Health, and Chiefs of Staff of the Army, Navy and Air Force. It has an executive secretariat which conducts the bulk of its work. The second element is empowering relevant state entities and providing with the necessary human, financial and material capacity to fulfill their obligations under the treaty. Third point is to set out measures that state parties will take to implement, and this is done notably through the Executive Secretariat, which coordinates military resources and other state agencies with a view to meeting the National Demining Plan's goals. Among its tasks, it plans, coordinates and controls demining activities, as well as mine risk prevention and education to the public, guides and develops thanks to specialised personnel and in coordination with other state agencies, tasks and activities related to victim assistance. It plans the budget for the year and in line with the mission set out in the National Mine Action Annual Directive. We have adopted these elements to put into practice the provisions of the Convention and the National Mine Action Plan works to do this. It set out a number of factors for consideration, clear objectives, the destruction of stockpiled AP mines, clearing mines, as well as land titles and victim assistance. 3 priorities were set out. 1, minefields near populated areas. 2, minefields near borders. 3, minefields in remote, unpopulated areas. The methodology relied on International Mine Action Standards, IMAS, national regulations in force relating to the armed forces, as well as the support of GICHD with regard to evaluation of the clearance process. There was a precise plan set out in phases and periods. 1, planning and preparation. 2, mine action. 3, post-clearance. Throughout the process, there have been cross-cutting actions and commitment from government agencies to coordinate mine action and humanitarian demining. 4 demining units were gradually set up to train personnel to conduct these activities, to provide PPE, and to lead mine detection, to set up facilities and camps for personnel so they can work on the ground, and to provide and acquire and provide machinery, vehicles, generators and other equipment. The Arica Humanitarian Demining Unit is composed of 91 people and looks after the regions of Arica, Parincotta and Tarapacá. It began work in August 2004, has cleared 97 areas, destroyed 134,513 mines, and released 16,815,141 square meters of land. The Calamar Humanitarian Demining Unit, or HDU, is composed of 32 people and works in the Antofagasta region. It began in April 2006, has cleared 67 areas, destroyed 31,382 mines, and released 6,358,809 square meters of land. The Punta Arenas HDU is composed of 32 people and works in the region of Magallanes and Chilean Antarctic. It began work in August 2007, cleared 19 areas and destroyed 10,959 mines, releasing 2,142,560 square meters of land. There is the Ponta Operations Unit, which is composed of 42 people and is working on the islands in Magallanes and Antarctic Chile. It began operations in 2008, has cleared 14 areas and destroyed 3,491 mines and released 325,978 square meters of land. finally, there is the Training Center for Demining and Explosives Destruction, created in 2004 as part of the Army Engineering School. It plans, programs, directs, trains, and educates personnel in the Army in humanitarian demining and explosive ordnance disposal. Furthermore, on behalf of SECNA, the Executive Committee carries out activities relating to certification of cleared areas. It has internationally recognized training courses and has had students from Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, and Honduras. Furthermore, it has cleared 3 areas, destroyed 169 mines, and released 102,413 square meters of land. In August 2003, we finished the mine stockpile destruction plan. We completed it, rather, destroying 300,039 APMs. This was 2 years and 7 months prior to the deadline. In 2019, we completed the destruction of remaining anti-personnel mines. Today, Chile has no stockpiled anti-personnel mines or any retained mines. Furthermore, on 25th July 2017, we enacted Law 21,021, which provides compensation and assistance in terms of rehabilitation, social inclusion to victims of accidents caused by mines or explosive devices that have been abandoned and remain unexploded. 6th September 2018, the implementing regulation for the aforesaid law was approved. SECNAT has set out actions to assist victims, more than 1,000 actions indeed, in accessing various medical benefits, facilitating integration into the social protection system, and accessing available state benefits. Furthermore, hand in hand with the Ministry of Education, we have on an annual basis conducted mine risk education activities in regions where there are anti-personnel mines. At the beginning of our implementation process, we received a lot of regional assistance, equipment, IT, and many other areas. Chile has provided assistance itself to a number of Latin American countries. The last and final point is making a regular and significant financial contribution to state programs to implement the convention. In this regard, Chile has ensured it has the state budget to conduct humanitarian demining. All 4 of these elements were critical in Chile meeting its obligations. In closing, following 18 years of work, thanks to the work of military and civilian armed forces across the armed forces, on the 18th February this year, we've completed all of our Article 6 obligations, cleared 200 areas, 779,000 mines destroyed, and cleared 27,523,823 square meters of land. Land has been returned to landholders. So, in summary, there is great interest in fulfilling the provisions of the agreement for civil society, and thanks to government support, to the creation of a national commission which was empowered to coordinate our work under all of the convention's articles. 3, identifying the management of resources and the different organizations that would be involved, and 4, through political will at the highest levels, we have had the necessary resources to ensure national ownership of the process. All of these elements, as I said, were essential in Chile having fulfilled its obligations in a timely fashion. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Sergio, for sharing that with us. A truly impressive cross-government effort from you. The lessons learned from Chile will be extremely important to continue sharing. I hope that we can hear more about the challenges faced throughout the process and how Chile managed to overcome them. Congratulations once again to Chile for your success. It's a great example of implementation of Action 1 of the Oslo Action Plan. I would now like to offer the floor to Wolfgang Binzal to offer us the perspective of the MASG on donor coordination. Wolfgang, please to hand over the floor to you now. We can't hear you, Wolfgang. Is your microphone on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Wolfgang. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Unfortunately, you can't see me if I'm not mistaken, because the image is so dark that the video is not working very well. Is that right?
We can actually see you. Yes, we can. It's a little bit dark, but we can see you okay, and we can hear you as well. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you on behalf of the Mine Action Support Group for this opportunity to give an input on donor coordination at this year's Intersessional meetings. The Mine Action Support Group was founded in the very early days of civilian mine action in 1988 and is an informal group of mine action donors. So state representatives from MASG member states meet twice a year to discuss current issues in mine action. It is an informal framework based on tradition and practice, if I may say so. So there are no official terms of reference, and strictly speaking, there's no formal membership to the MASG. However, participation is based on invitation, and invitation is based on landmine monitor donor lists. So for us, we took over, Germany took over the chair in January this year. For us, aligning donor coordination to support the implementation of the Oslo Action Plan means to exchange information and best practices among stakeholders with the goal to assist affected countries to get rid then of landmines. As a German chair, we have kept the practice to separate MASG meetings in two different parts. First, there's an open session where affected countries and the UN agencies, the relevant UN agencies and observers like ISU from APMBC, the ITF or the GICHD are also participating. And then we have a closed session where MASG member states seek multilateral dialogue between themselves. For the purpose of increasing and intensifying the exchange between donor states and affected countries, we use the open meeting of the MASG as a forum for dialogue with affected countries directly. For example, at our last meeting, we had inputs from the Colombian, from the Libyan, and the Sudanese mine action authorities, which briefed us on current challenges. Furthermore, another example is when we have input or presentations from operators or also from UN agencies. For example, last time we had a presentation by UNICEF on risk education in Ukraine. At the closed MASG session, member states exchange about best donor practice and experience or challenges they face on mine action. Recently, for example, we put up a thematic virtual meeting regarding the consequences for donors, UN agencies and operators due to the corona pandemic. More generally, donors discuss their activities in different countries, their priorities and their approach to mine action funding under the previous US chairmanship as a measure of transparency, and mine action funding, sorry. For example, under the previous chairmanship, which was headed by the United States, we had the United States promoted as a measure of transparency a matrix showing donor commitment in different affected countries. So you had a spreadsheet with donors in the one hand side and then affected countries on the others, and that matrix showed where was happening what by whom. So our intention is to transform this matrix into a map, a kind of infographic where you can see on a world map what is happening where. Excuse me, I'm still irritated by the way I'm displayed in this camera. So let me just change the place where one can see me better. I hope this is, yeah, it's not better. Anyway, okay, we will go ahead. One of our priorities, German priorities, for the MASG chair concerns country coalitions, so-called country coalitions or national mine action platforms. Last year, we, at the review conference of the Ottawa Convention, Germany and Bosnia and Herzegovina agreed to take up such a coalition. In this relationship, we want to work together and gather all the stakeholders, including operators and national authorities and affected communities to work together and to accelerate the clearance process, and then with the final aim to achieve a mine-free country according to Article 5 obligations under the APMBC. Due to the global corona pandemic, unfortunately, we had to postpone our plans a little bit. We planned to have a meeting in April. We are now scheduling this for autumn in Sarajevo. Now, these platforms between donors and affected countries are also mentioned in the Oslo Action Plan under number 45 and are, of course, closely linked to international cooperation and assistance. We hope to, as a MASG chair, to gather experience from different donors and different affected countries, other donors who are also trying to promote this country coalition concept, and then to publish this in a document for best practices in the future. We also believe that the discussion on how mine action fits into the peace humanitarian nexus is necessary. In other words, how important is the contribution of mine action for development goals? I do believe that this is an important debate that we have to have because this has gained additional importance in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, which will bring us more competition from other needs, from different needs resulting from this pandemic, like economic crisis all over the world, and also hunger situations and so on. So this is going to compete with the need for mine action, and the contribution of mine action to development has to be explored in order to compete in this framework. So I think this is a debate we have to have. And finally, another point I would like to mention is the threat of improvised landmines that will stay on the agenda, and that is important also to us as donors. Tragically, you all know the use of landmines against civilians, sometimes explicitly targeting civilians, improvised landmines targeting civilians, is not receding, is growing, and the way to integrate the fight against these weapons into mine action has still to be explored in discussions with donors and with affected countries. This question will be particularly important with regard to the moment when a state can declare to be landmine free, because and if it is under a terrorist threat, because then occurs the situation where it is declared landmine free, but it still has an IED problem, possibly. Now, finally, to conclude, I would like to emphasize that the MASG is a group which exists beside the conventions. It provides a platform for a diverse group of stakeholders that may or may not be members of the conventions, and focuses on the implementation of mine action by enhancing this open dialogue between donors and including sessions for affected countries and the United Nations and observers. The MASG contributes to donor coordination to support the implementation of the Oslo Action Plan, without obviously being an instrument of the Oslo Action Plan. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Wolfgang. Certainly the MASG is very well placed to support the implementation of the Oslo Action Plan actions on cooperation and assistance, particularly given your information exchange and best practice exchange function and your dialogue with affected countries. So thank you very much indeed for that. I would now like to offer the floor to Joe Shapiro, my colleague from DFID, who will be giving us some of DFID's latest thinking on aligning donor coordination. Joe, I can see you popping up on the screen. You have the floor.
Great, thank you very much. Just going to share my screen here. Okay, hopefully you can see my presentation. Let me know if not.
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to discuss an ongoing piece of work being delivered jointly by GICHD and ITAD, a development consultancy contracted by DFID. This work involves mapping donor approaches to measuring the outcomes of their programs, including by reviewing existing strategies, theories of change, and results frameworks. The objective is to understand where the key similarities and differences lie in donor approaches to measuring the outcomes of mine action programs, and with this understanding to explore, with donors and the wider sector, opportunities to more closely align approaches to outcome measurement. A bit of background to start with. DFID supports mine action through our Global Mine Action Programme 2, which operates in 14 countries, delivering land release, risk education, and capacity building. As part of this programme, ITAD was asked to conduct a research study into the links between mine action and the outcomes in DFID's theory of change. A literature review by ITAD showed that there was a lack of evidence demonstrating causal links between mine action activities and the intended outcomes. This led to the creation of an informal group of colleagues from across the sector to look at how to build a stronger body of evidence. One of the outcomes of these discussions was for GICHD and ITAD to map the approaches of donors to measuring outcomes, with the aim of identifying opportunity to more closely align on outcome measurement. The final goal is to have a model theory of change and set of outcome indicators that can be used by donors, national authorities, and other partners across the sector. This initial mapping exercise is a first step towards that. This work focuses on measuring change at the outcome level and will be complementary to ongoing work by a number of partners on areas such as standard beneficiary definitions and output level key performance indicators. DFID sees a range of benefits in aligning the approach to measuring outcomes. This will help us to build the evidence base on the impact of mine action, as data will be more comparable across programs. A better understanding of the impact of our interventions will support better program design and implementation, ultimately helping us to maximize impact. Being more able to demonstrate the benefits of mine action may become increasingly important as efforts to deal with the impact of COVID-19 place greater strain on budgets, a point that Wolfgang also just made. Greater alignment may also support stronger collaboration between donors and national authorities, as ideally we would have a set of outcome indicators that partners across the sector can use. There may also be opportunities for delivering greater value for money by allowing operators to standardize data collection across programs and spend less time reporting different data to each donor. Finally, DFID believes the time is right for this work, which can build on the previous sector successes in aligning approaches and defining terms. 2 decades ago, there was no common definition for demining, clearance, or mine risk education, and the concept of survey was fluid. More recently, the definition for beneficiaries have been firmed up. A sensible next step is to turn attention to aligning our approach to outcome measurement. GICHD and ITAD's mapping work is ongoing, so all I can discuss here are a few emerging findings. Overall, they have found that donors prioritize different objectives, putting varying levels of emphasis on humanitarian, development, or stabilization and peacebuilding benefits. This is often linked to which part of the government the funding comes from. There is also variation in the extent to which a theory of change methodology is used, with some donors measuring results based on a detailed theory of change, and others adopting a more high-level or implied theory of change outlined in overarching strategy documents. There is generally a focus on outputs rather than outcomes. These are easier to measure and have more standardized indicators and terms, such as the meters squared of land cleared, released, or cancelled. There is also variation in the scope of donor programs. For example, with some donors including elements such as victim assistance or stockpile management. Looking at the indicators used, we can see some similarities in land release outcome indicators, such as the amount of land used for agriculture or housing. On risk education, a large number of donors are measuring knowledge gained through risk education sessions, with a smaller number also measuring behavior change. There are some similarities and differences in the approaches to measuring capacity development and treaty compliance. And it's also worth mentioning that there are a number of indicators in the Oslo Action Plan and SDGs which may be useful in this context, and which are also being considered as part of this work. I'd like to address some of the challenges that this work faces. The first, as already mentioned, is that donor priorities vary in terms of the focus on humanitarian, development, or peace-building objectives. While this will limit the extent to which it is possible to fully align outcome measurement, there would still be value in, for example, having a model theory of change and associated set of indicators that has distinct strands covering the range of common objectives. Donors and others would then be able to draw from the parts of this model that is most appropriate for them, depending on their priorities. A further challenge is that outcome measurement is inherently complex, and the outcomes we want to measure can be highly dependent on specific country contexts. We can't escape this complexity, but it is also true that across a large number of countries, we are trying to measure the same things, such as how land is used post-clearance or whether behavior has changed after risk education, in subtly different ways. I hope that this work can identify opportunities to start measuring these things in the same way across programs, while recognizing that we may want to keep measuring other separate outcomes depending on the country context. Finally, I mentioned earlier that there are differences in how donors use theories of change. This will mean that not all donors or other partners may be willing to draw from any theory of change model that may result from this work. Nevertheless, all the approaches mapped so far have included indicators intended to measure the outcomes of programs. So I hope that the set of model outcome indicators that may be produced as part of this work will still be of value. This final slide outlines the timeline for this initial piece of work. As you can see, GICHD and ITAD are working on a paper to be discussed at the GICHD donor seminar in September. Of course, this is also a conversation to be had with the wider sector, including mine-affected states and operators. Once we have the findings and recommendations of the initial paper, I look forward to discussing them with colleagues across the sector. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe. I think the GICHD ITAD work to map donor approaches to measuring outcomes seems very timely, particularly given the budget constraints that you referred to because of COVID. You said donors often prioritize different objectives, but hopefully your work to produce a set of model outcome indicators will be of value to donors. And we certainly look forward to seeing and discussing with you the final paper. I'd now like to invite Jun Yamada to take the floor to give us Japan's perspective on South-South cooperation. So if Jun is there, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for coordinators and ISU and everyone who involved in convening this important event, even in such a difficult circumstances. Although the intersessional meeting is held under the informal format, but this event remains important, particularly since this is the first event after the first review conference, which was held in Oslo last year. And we need to use this opportunity to get a good start on next 5 years to achieve our goal in 2025. And I would like to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
No, we can't yet, Jun. Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes,
yep.
We can see it now. Great.
Okay, and today I would like to talk about South-South and triangular cooperation, and to introduce an example of an ongoing triangular cooperation program between Cambodia, Colombia, and Japan. And the aim of this presentation is to enhance cooperative relationship among state parties. And I would be very happy if this presentation helps you to broaden your views and expand the future cooperative relationships among states parties. Firstly, I would like to introduce South-South cooperation and the triangular cooperation. South-South cooperation is defined as cooperation between developing countries for development. It means that one country that is more developed in a certain area assists other developing countries in development of that area. The triangular cooperation is defined by the UN as a southern-driven partnership between two or more developing countries, supported by developed countries or multilateral organizations to implement development cooperation programs and projects. Although the definition may differ depending on the organizations, the general idea must be similar. Now, what is the significance of these relationships? In SDG Goal 17, South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation are included in the targets and indicators. We recognize that these forms of cooperation will contribute to the promotion of regional and global cooperation, as well as complement and supplement bilateral cooperations with the knowledge and experience bilateral cooperations with the knowledge and experience of developing countries to achieve development results. These forms of cooperation provide benefits for each country. For example, a beneficiary country can benefit from more tailored expertise and resources provided by the pivotal countries or supporting country, which has proven experience in tackling the same issues. Pivotal countries can learn further about effective and efficient donorship from the facilitating countries, and thus developed its leadership in the international community. Facilitating country can provide more efficient cooperation with less financial costs and strengthen partnership with the pivotal country, which has often graduated from the ODA. As a result, more efficient and more sustainable projects can be provided. Based on this understanding, Japan carries out various triangular cooperation initiatives. Today, I'd like to introduce a case in which Japan is providing support to Colombia through the Cambodian Mine Action Center, or CMAC. In this project, Japan is facilitating consultation between Colombia and Cambodia and providing funding. Then Cambodia will provide training and education based on its experience and know-how. And Colombia will receive practical mine action training and education. Here are some pictures from the courses. You can see how the course goes. For example, we have classroom lectures, mine detector operations, even mine detection dog trainings, and mine disposal method courses. The project started in 2017 and will continue until 2022. CMAC provides field training and classroom seminar to the member of Acción Integral contra Mina Antipersonnel, or ICUMA, in both Cambodia and Colombia. Among them, there will be a total of 7 courses, including a mine action operation management, land release techniques, land mine disposal method, mine detection dog training methods, machine and so on. In addition, taking into account a gender perspective, this educational program is, of course, not limited to men. So far, 88 people have been trained, including 10 women in this course since 2017, and we expect to provide training to 30 more personnel by 2022. This is just one example of our contribution to mine action, and we will remain continuously and actively involved in mine action in cooperation with the international community. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Jun. It was a very interesting insight into how triangular cooperation works, and we thank you very much indeed for that. I would now like to give the floor to Diana, who is our committee's gender focal point, to say a few words about the importance of gender and diversity. So Diana, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, yeah.
Perfectly. So I will turn now to Spanish. Para Colombia ha sido...
For Colombia, it has been an honor to become a gender focal point under this committee. In the panel on gender and diversity, which we held earlier, we could hear important examples about the need to strengthen the consideration of these points in the effective implementation of the Convention. I would like to take this opportunity to make the following points. It's important to make sure that women participate in studies and survey teams to make sure that the information collected allows us to generate comprehensive responses to support affected communities. Mine Action can have an important role in empowering women in affected communities affected by mines. A cross-cutting role can be played by gender roles and the need for diverse participants in aid to victims in order to guarantee that women have equal access to health services and long-term support for rehabilitation. Unfortunately, women and girls continue to be vulnerable given a number of factors. In addition, the significant contribution which women and girls could bring to Mine Action is only being discovered now. This community is moving in the right direction with the aim of strengthening the important role of women in the sustainable development of their communities. This discussion is not just on the role of women and girls in the framework of Mine Action, but also in the importance of addressing inequalities between men and women. We must work jointly for social change to strengthen human rights in all of our societies. Mine Action can be a factor to produce a real difference. If we do not bear gender issues in mind in Mine Action, we will end up with strategies which are not properly effective and will not bear fruit. They will not have a positive legacy for the communities. This is work which we must address together as the international community, organizations and states. We must all learn from the lessons of the last several years, for example, with regard to promotion of development, human rights, on the effective integration of gender mainstreaming into our systems. We believe that we are starting to make effective change in moving in the right direction, such as in the reports put forward by Cambodia, Turkey and the UK this year. We have seen the inclusion of a gender dynamic in exchange visits and many other areas of international cooperation. I would like to take this opportunity to encourage states to include more information on their reports, including how gender is mainstreamed into their assistance efforts. I would like to raise a number of questions which might help you to address these issues in a comprehensive Mine Action. For example, with regard to funding, how can you make sure that a growing number of women also have the opportunity to benefit from the efforts made? Additionally, when funding is provided, how can we make sure that gender considerations are borne in mind by the supporting organisations? Equally, how can we make sure that we provide greater opportunities to women who are committed to the Convention's work? All donor states and cooperating states must be able to do this in their promotion of gender equality. Our responsibility is to be aware and recognise all contribution to the sector, including Mine Action, to make sure we don't leave anyone behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Diana. Now, you raised a few questions there, which I think neatly leads us into the Q&A segment, for which we won't unfortunately have too much time. But I think it would be great if we could get one or two panelists to respond to the questions that you just posed. Now, I'm going to put my colleague Joe on the spot here, because I think from DFID's point of view, they have some. I think they will have some useful input to respond to those questions about how they include gender and diversity when they're programming. So, Joe, if I may, I'll put you on the spot to respond to that, please.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of our programming, so I mentioned earlier our current program, the Global Mine Action Program 2, or GMAP2, and the implementing organizations for that program are required to address gender and disability, and to ensure that the different needs and perspectives of women, girls, boys and men are considered and inform all areas of mine action programming. As part of our monitoring of the program and in the evaluation, ITAD, which is our monitoring and evaluation partner, assesses whether gender is indeed informing programming and advises where improvements can be made. And I would say that that kind of iterative approach to incorporating gender considerations into programming is really important to ensure that you are kind of building on the evidence that's available. And the data that's collected in our log frame on the beneficiaries of land release and risk education is disaggregated by age, gender, and the percentage of beneficiaries that have a disability. And that requirement to collect disability data, that was new under the current program, and the implementing organizations have been trialing methods of collecting this data. And in some cases, this data, along with wider data on the age and gender of people receiving risk education, is also being used to refine the way in which the activities are delivered. So I'm conscious of time, so I'll leave my answer there. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe. I'm just, as you mentioned time, I'm just going to ask if our interpreters will allow us to, 10 more minutes so that we can just take a couple more questions. But before that, I wondered, but perhaps Wolfgang, you might want to say just a couple of words on the gender and diversity issue. If we can give the floor to you. No, it looks like you're not there. No, you're not there. Okay, so would any of the other panelists like to come in on that gender issue? I don't know whether, June, would you like to respond to the questions on gender?
Honestly speaking, this is not only focusing only on the gender perspective, but basically we treat equally whether it's men or women or the gender or diversity. So maybe we can more and more include the women. And I think as some other panelists mentioned, we should pay more attention to include those kind of aspects when we make a new programs or project. So, and of course, we are in a position to support those aspects, the gender diversity aspects. So we think it's very important. So we are trying to include as much as possible. So those point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, June. I've just been told, Wolfgang, that your hand is back up, so perhaps we can connect to you. We'll try that.
Okay.
Okay, we can see you, but we can't hear you. No. We can't hear you, Wolfgang. That's better. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. I'm sorry for the technology that is still not up to date. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a couple of words to gender, because it is an important issue in the MASG group, and it's to us as a chair, it's an important issue. We are looking for an exchange with UN agencies and with operators on how to operationalize the inclusion of gender in mine action. For example, at next meeting, it is on our agenda. And it is. We also have, like Joe just said, log frames. I mean, this is as German donors, log frames in our project planning for to include gender issues. I would just like to mention one example why it's important to include gender in mine action. There might be country situations where there is where men and women have to be approached by the same sex, and by applying gender balanced approaches, the community will be able to reach more of the affected people, of the beneficiaries. And so in different circumstances, we are trying to include this issue in our discussions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Wolfgang. And I would just reiterate the call from Deanna to states parties to include as much information as you can in your Article 7 reports on gender and diversity. Now, we've received some questions from ICBL, and you very kindly put them in the chat there so everyone can see them. I think I see that there are 4 there. I think we've probably only got time to deal with one of them. So I think I will take the first one. And as this is a question to donors, I might turn to Joe again on this one, and perhaps Wolfgang if there's time. How are donors concretely coordinating to ensure that all mine-affected countries and areas receive adequate support, and that donors are not only responding to humanitarian crises, but also addressing smaller levels of contamination and legacy contamination to achieve completion in the shortest possible time? So, Joe, you're up on screen already, so over to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sure, and thanks very much for the question. So I can speak from the UK's perspective in terms of kind of coordination with other donors, and I would say that when we're thinking about where we're going to target our support, collaboration with other donors through the MASG, but also more informally and using the data that's available through the Landmine Monitor and other sources is very important for us for looking and seeing, considering where we're going to target our support and ensuring that there aren't any kind of major gaps in the support provided. The question talks about the kind of balance between the humanitarian crises and legacy contamination, and I think that that recognises that there is often a balancing act that donors need to do here between areas of greatest need, if you're looking at things like casualty figures, which are often the places that are conflict affected and have humanitarian crises, whilst also not forgetting the legacy contamination countries and the importance of getting them over the line and getting them to completion. And certainly from the UK's perspective, we recognise the need for both of those objectives to be met, and that's reflected in the countries that are part of our current programming. And I'll just say on the point of investing in legacy contamination and getting countries over the line, I think the points that I made earlier about the importance of demonstrating the impact of mine action on things like longer term development goals is also important from a donor perspective there, so that we can really tell a good story about what our investment is doing in those legacy contexts. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Joe. We're very short on time, but I wondered, Wolfgang, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that from a donor coordination perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps, I mean, we exchange our needs, obviously, with affected countries, with their mine action authorities. We are in contact with them, with mine action centers and so on, also with the operators. And then we have a discussion. We bring the information we get from there into the discussion with in the donor group, in the closed session, or also in an exchange with emails or so on. we also are in contact, of course, with other stakeholders or agencies, particularly, of course, UNMAS, but also UNDP, UNICEF, and then think tanks like the GICHD. It's a very important partner to us, and just to name a few. And then we are open to suggestions from the side of operators who very often have the best inside information from affected countries. And again, we bring all these information into the discussions we have among us donors then. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Wolfgang. And I'm going to have to draw matters to a close now because we will be cut off in just a couple of minutes. But I just wanted to thank everyone for participating. Thank you to our panelists. I think we've had an excellent discussion this afternoon. And it's great to hear about so much excellent work going on on cooperation and assistance that I hope will contribute to the implementation of the Oslo Action Plan. Just a few words to wrap up the first day of our virtual intersessional meetings. Thank you all very much for your participation. We will start tomorrow with a panel on safety and protection of mine survivors in situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies, and that's at 1500 Geneva time. Finally, just a word of thanks to all of you for your patience on the technical side of things. We're aware that it hasn't been smooth running for all of you, but thank you for sticking with it, and we hope that those problems will be sorted tomorrow. And finally, a really, really big thank you to the interpreters for your work today. We know that it's not been easy for you, and we're really appreciative of your efforts. It's absolutely vital to our work and the ability for these intersessionals to go ahead that you're with us. So thank you very much indeed. And all it remains for me to say is good night to everyone, and we hope to see you all again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Goodbye.